was asked by Yocheved Shonik just a couple of weeks ago. She asked me if I would willing to offer the Kovod Achron for her father.
That's the sound of Sunday's live stream of Rabbi Reuven Bulka's funeral service. Bulka was a beloved Ottawa rabbi and humanitarian, someone that former Prime Minister Stephen Harper once called Canada's rabbi. As you probably know by now, Rabbi Bulka died on Sunday morning. He was being treated for terminal pancreatic and liver cancer in New York State. He had just turned 77. There were about 800 people who attended in person at the Long Island funeral home, but officials there told me it was the largest gathering they had ever seen online for a funeral. More than 4,230 different screens were tuned in to the live broadcast from 27 countries, including Israel and Canada and the US and the UK, but also they said people were watching from Russia, from Iran, from the United Arab Emirates, from South Korea, from Argentina and Finland, and the list goes on, as members of his family paid tribute to Bulka, including his son, Shmuel.
Make no mistake, the Jewish community has lost a giant from the community. The Canadian community has lost a giant, and the world at large has lost an unbelievable person.
I'm Ellen Besner, and this is what Jewish Canada sounds like for Tuesday, June 29th, 2021. Welcome to the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Rabbi Bulka is survived by his second wife, Leah, who he married in 2002. He and his first wife, Naomi, had 6 children. 5 are still living. While Rabbi Bulka served as the rabbi at Ottawa's Machziki Hadass synagogue for nearly 50 years, he wrote over 30 books, and he was an expert in a form of psychotherapy called logotherapy, which helps patients find meaning in life. He also founded Kind Canada. It's an organization to promote kindness. And you might remember we did an episode on the CJN Daily just a few weeks ago when Canada became the first country in the world to enshrine Kindness Week into law. It's going to be held every February in Bulka's honor. Bulka was also a fixture on national television every Remembrance Day. He was the Jewish chaplain you would see on the November 11th ceremonies broadcast from the National War Memorial in Ottawa. In one of his last public appearances in January, Rabbi Bulka recorded a short video from New York State, and they played it during a national prayer webcast that was held in his honor. He thanked the organizers, and true to form, Rabbi Bulka didn't dwell on his own health issues. Instead, he turned his focus and sent blessings to Canadian families who needed it during the pandemic.
If there's anything we learned from the COVID crisis is that we're all in this together, and the more together we are in this, the better we're going to get out of it. And you're coming together this evening, coming from so many different directions, but united in wishes for good health. I join you in I wish for you the best of health.
Coming up, we'll hear from 2 leaders of the Jewish community in Ottawa who share how Bulka inspired them. But first, here's what's making news elsewhere in Canada right now. Police in Montreal are investigating after an attempt to burn down a kosher bakery. It happened early Monday morning at the Boulangerie Montreal Kosher on St. Louis Street in the Saint Laurent neighborhood. Police arrived to find what they're calling a, quote, source of heat, similar to an incendiary device that had been thrown into the place. Although there was only minor damage, the police are suspicious, and so are Jewish groups, because a kosher restaurant in the very same shopping center was vandalized just a few days ago. So far, both are being treated only as arson and not as a hate crime. Meanwhile, the outgoing Israel Consul General for Ontario and Western Canada is making the rounds to say goodbye and thank you. Galit Baram's 5-year term is coming to an end next month. You can read a full interview with her on our website, but here's one takeaway for you. Baram says she didn't know much about hockey before moving here, but now she's departing as a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs. Tributes to Rabbi Bulka have been pouring in from political leaders like Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and from ordinary Canadians like stuntman Stu Schwartz, who's an Ottawa radio personality. He says their paths would cross at many events in Ottawa, and it didn't matter what faith you were because Rabbi Bulka accepted everyone. Schwartz is a 2-time cancer survivor himself. I spoke with Andrea Freedman. She's the CEO of Ottawa's Jewish Federation, where she worked closely with Bulka. Can you share a personal story that comes to your mind of your personal relationship with the rabbi?
I guess what's interesting is you asked me to share a personal story, and I can, but as I'm thinking through the things that I'll share, they're not unique, because what he has done for me, he's done for so many people. So, I'll give you two. One was really before I moved to Ottawa. I had interviewed for a job many, many years ago, and I wasn't the successful candidate, and Rabbi Bulka was on the interview committee. And the day after I got the news that I didn't get the job, Rabbi Bulka called me. I don't know anybody else who calls the unsuccessful candidate. Just people don't do that except for Rabbi Bulka. And so it's a personal story to me, and it's so meaningful to me, but I recognize that it's not unique. Similarly, I had some minor surgery a few years ago, and Rabbi Bulka called me every day for 2 weeks until I, told him I'm back at the gym. I'm really okay. But that's just who he was, and how he lived his life, and how he modeled kindness for the rest of us.
I remember what Stephen Harper said at the webinar. He said he's Canada's rabbi,
Yeah.
But it's not just for Jewish people that this is true. And I'm sure you've been hearing reactions from people who are not Jewish about this.
Absolutely. And it's in part because he really was Canada's rabbi, and he spoke at high profile events. But what was remarkable about him is that it was his everyday moments with people that made him so special and so unique. So, my colleague told me this amazing story when we first heard about his diagnosis, and she had talked about when her mom was quite ill and was in the hospital, and they were congregants of Rabbi Bulka's, and so he went to visit her in the hospital. But in the course of spending time with her, he discovered that her roommate, who wasn't Jewish, was really lonely and wasn't having, really any visitors come. And so even after my colleague's mom was released from the hospital, he continued to visit this woman in the hospital. What's remarkable is these are not exceptions to the rule.
Anything that you want our listeners and readers to know?
We all can be inspired by him, by his memory, but really by his actions. And that's to be kind. I mean, it's acts, but it's also, it's so much more than that. It's just finding the right spin on something, of how you can phrase something that will make somebody else feel better. I mean, that's what Rabbi Bulka, I shouldn't say, one of the areas in which Rabbi Bulka excelled was just finding ways of making other people feel better. And that's something we can all do. None of us are skilled at it as Rabbi Bulka is, but we can still try.
Appreciate the time. And again, deepest condolences to all of you.
Thank you, and same to you.
For Ian Sherman, this wasn't the way he had hoped to begin his term as chair of Ottawa's Jewish Federation. He was appointed just days ago, and on Friday, he was awarded the Rabbi Bulka Prize for his volunteering at an Ottawa regional cancer organization.
I don't think I can share just one story about Rabbi Bulka, because it's 5 decades of touching my life. I knew him well before then. He married my wife, Randy, and I 36 years ago on June 30th. He's seen our 3 sons grow up. He was at the Brit Milah, the circumcision ceremony for each of our sons. He attended the bar mitzvahs for each of our sons. We've shared every aspect of community life with Rabbi Bulka. Rabbi Bulka has been a huge inspiration in my life for over 50 years. And he's a big part of the reason of why I've personally dedicated my life to a life of giving to community, and in particular the Jewish community.
When was the last time you were in touch?
We were in touch on June the 6th by email. It was his 77th birthday. I sent him a note. I've sent him several notes over the course of the past several months during his illness. Of course, I used to see him regularly. And he wrote me back, as he always did. And on January 11th, at 10:57, I sent a long email, and it was just titled, "To our beloved and lifelong rabbi." And I sent him an email expressing not only my appreciation, but my deep love for him.
Well, at least he got to hear that. One last thing. What do you want Canadians to know about the impact Rabbi Bulka had on Canada?
Well, I would say that, and particularly in the world that we have been living for many decades now, however, certainly some of the events and episodes and incidents of the past period of time, the racism and the anti-Semitism and the hatred that we need to stamp out in this world. Rabbi Bulka only stood for kindness and goodness in everything that he did. And he was so exemplary, regardless of race, regardless of religion, regardless of color, regardless of orientation. He only stood for goodness and kindness for the world. And if we could ever follow his exemplary model and be the true example and community builder and stamp out everything that we're facing today of such a negative nature, we would all be in a better place, all of us. That's what Rabbi Bulka stood for.
I just want to tell you that I also knew Rabbi Bulka personally, and for a long time. He was a gracious help to me when I was going to university in Ottawa, and I was one of the leaders of the Jewish Students' Union at Carleton, but also much more recently. Some of you know that I'm an author, and I've written a book about the contribution of Canada's Jews to the military, especially about the 17,000 Canadians who served in the military in the Second World War. It's called Double Threat. Rabbi Bulka was a big help in my research. He was always ready to connect me with Jewish veterans and Jewish military chaplains. In his last email to me, he reminded me that he was born on D-Day, June 6, 1944. And that's what Jewish Canada sounds like for this episode of the CJN Daily, sponsored by Metropia. Integrity, community, quality, and customer care. Today's listener shout-out is to Merle Wolofsky in Boston, although she's originally from Montreal, where her grandfather, Harry, or Hirsch Wolofsky, founded Canada's first Yiddish daily, the Kenneter Edler. We'll end the episode with another excerpt from Rabbi Bulka's funeral. And just to let you know, you can watch the whole thing if you missed it. It's on the CJN YouTube channel.
You know, when I talk about someone who is dedicated to making the world a better place, the way I think he did that was when he saw people who are different. A lot of people, most people today, unfortunately, when they see people who are different, all they do is go toward the differences. Some people make a career out of exploiting the differences. My father was the exact opposite. He would always look for commonalities, for how there was something he would have in common with somebody, even if he was different. Didn't mean he compromised his principles, but he was always looking for commonalities. And I think, so we, I think as a family are appreciative that he had the opportunity to see firsthand through emails, through so many different things, the impact that he had.